Hey, welcome everybody. We're gonna get started. I'm gonna thank everybody for joining, and of course, a special welcome to our students who produced the film, and of course to the survivors who are joining us tonight, our guests of honor. We're gonna ask Rabbi Josh Kahn, the head of school, to open with a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Elliot. Bershus, Ray Taubis. First of all, welcome. It's nice to see everyone, even if it's kind of from this screen. I want to try to share a thought with you that hopefully captures a lot of what we're feeling, with the hopes that our distance really doesn't impact the feelings, maybe only magnifies the feelings and the excitement we have to be able to be here together, and the tremendous sense of reverence and gratitude we have for our heroic survivors who have given of themselves, really of themselves, in terms of sharing their stories with our seniors, as well as joining us tonight. Yosef Dov Levi Soloveitchik develops an idea in which he compares Kedushas Yisrael, the holiness that every Jew has, to the holiness of a Sefer Torah. And as we prepare for Shavuos, right, the time for Kabbalah SaTorah, Zman Matan Torasenu, where we celebrate the Torah, so it's fascinating to think about what that could mean if Kedushas Yisrael, the sanctity, the holiness of every Jew, is on some level comparable to the Sefer Torah. And the Rav develops an example where he sees that from a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Aleph, tells us that the Talmidim of Rabbi Eliezer came to visit him, and Rabbi Eliezer was gravely ill. As they cried, as the Talmidim cried, watching their Rebbe so sick, Rabbi Akiva asked, why were they crying? They responded, Efshar Sefer Torah Shoroi B'Tza'ar. Is it possible that a Sefer Torah can be dwelling in pain? Velo Nivken, we're not going to cry? How could it be that we could witness a Sefer Torah in pain and not cry? Of course, in that case, in the Gemara's story, it wasn't a Sefer Torah, literally, that was in pain, but rather it was the person of Rabbi Eliezer that was in pain. And the Rav develops this notion that therefore a person can be an embodiment of the Sefer Torah. Chazal later tell us, in comparing or in complementing the importance of serving Talmidei Chachamim, the Gemara tells us, Gadol Shimusha Yoser Milimuda. As great as it is, as lofty and ideal as it is to learn Torah, it's even greater, says the Gemara, to serve a Talmid Chacham. Why is it greater to serve a Talmid Chacham? A Talmid Chacham is only an extension of the Torah. If a Torah itself is so great, so I would think that's the ideal, go right to the source. But the answer is because when we see Torah personified, when we see the actions, when we see what Torah looks like in real life, it's no longer a scroll, it's no longer a book, but it's a person who knows how to embody the Sefer Torah. That's Gadol Shimusha Yoser Milimuda. Over the course of the year, our seniors have been privileged to really take in a Holocaust education. And we know you've taken your learning seriously, seniors. But more importantly than what normally is provided through the opportunity to read articles, through the opportunity to open up an encyclopedia, or to read memoirs, was the opportunity to be mishameshed, literally to serve and sit at the feet of a hero, to sit at the feet of a true survivor who can tell you what their life was like, and to actually develop a connection with that person. And we know the connections that you developed with them because you've expressed that in your reflections, and any person who walked into the interviews saw the reverence that our seniors, our Talmidim felt for those survivors, the reverence, the way they wanted to soak up every word and literally every tear that would come from the survivors. And that's Gadol Shimusha Yoser Milimuda. And so we want to really express our heartfelt appreciation, our gratitude to the survivors who came to visit, to share of their stories, to impart their wisdom and their lessons, to give over their experience to us. It is going to be a cherished memory forever for us, and for you to know that what you've given over will always live on in the legacy of MTA, literally in terms of the video that's produced, but more importantly, in terms of the legacy that will be passed on to our seniors, and Emir Hashem, they'll pass them on to future generations. To create this kind of experience, which we know is so meaningful and the seniors will cherish, doesn't just happen. It happens as a result of incredible hard work. And we want to thank Mrs. Tova Rosenberg, who's the visionary, the creator of Names Not Numbers for the entire world, but specifically implements it here at MTA and ensures that there's a meaningful program for our Talmidim. I know everyone's muted, so you're probably all applauding. We appreciate that, as well as Elliot Fuchs, who started this evening, who's the person who's really helped implement and made that vision a reality for this year's 2019-2020 MTA Names Not Numbers. Thank you very much, Mr. Fuchs, for all of your hard work in putting together the learning throughout the year, the interview, and culminating in this evening. There are two other individuals we'd really like to express our appreciation to, and that is Michael Puro. For those who have watched the video is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece because it's produced by a master, and Michael Puro is not only a choreographic master, he's not only able to produce amazing videos, but he puts his heart into it. He does it with incredible care, and we appreciate, Michael, everything you do to make the video so meaningful. I'd also like to thank Mr. Jonah Kaplan. Jonah is an incredible author. He's an incredible journalist who gave of his time, really just generously out of the benevolence that he feels and just the menschlichkeit that he is. Jonah traveled to New York from North Carolina in order to train our students with how to conduct an interview. And I had the opportunity to speak to Jonah beforehand and then to sit in on his session. And he's not only a master journalist, but really a master mensch. And we deeply appreciate, Jonah, all of the time you spent in preparing our Talmidim for how to have an effective and meaningful interview. So thank you very much. We hope everyone enjoys the rest of the evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi Kahn. As Rabbi Kahn mentioned, I'm Elliot Fuchs. I was the educational coordinator for the program this year. Something that was really my great pleasure and my honor to be involved in a program of this importance from this kind of perspective. I'd like to echo Rabbi Kahn in expressing my appreciation and gratitude for Mrs. Tova Rosenberg and for Michael Puro and for Jonah Kaplan for all of their creative efforts and all of the hard work that they pour into this program. It's truly impressive to see from behind the scenes the amount of heart that is poured into producing this film and producing this experience for both our students and the survivors, as well as everyone who has the ability to participate either tonight or by watching the film. There's one part of this experience that I'd like to focus on from my perspective that I was able to appreciate from watching over the course of my involvement this year. One thing that really stood out over the course of the year was watching our students mature and take the time to reflect and to consider their existence in the greater context of Jewish history. It was an unbelievable process to watch these students go beyond themselves and step outside of their own thinking and recognize where they come from, what preceded them, and what will follow them. And this process culminated really in the moments of the interviews. When the survivors stepped into the rooms for the interviews, as Rabbi Kahn mentioned, you could sense the reverence in an instant. The feelings that our students had towards these survivors as they shared these stories was nothing less than watching. It was as if watching a grandchild worship their grandparent. It was beautiful and it was touching and it was inspirational to watch our students cross that generational divide, to cross that gap as they reached back into the past and tapped into these stories of their survivors. For me, that was one of the most impressive and moving parts of this entire process. It was an unbelievable pleasure and privilege to be involved from that perspective. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the students. You guys have been incredible over the course of the year. Your maturity, your reverence, your kavod that you were able to show to our survivors in all of the efforts that you put into this film. It's obvious to me, it's obvious to everyone who's involved, and it's obvious to everyone who has the opportunity to watch this film. So thank you to the students. Thank you to our survivors for sharing your stories and for being part of this process of passing on that generational torch and allowing us to have a glimpse into what you experienced. We're now going to have the opportunity to hear some remarks from Mrs. Tova Rosenberg, the creator of Names Not Numbers.
Good evening. Thank you to our survivors, our heroes, our Kadoshim. Thank you to our amazing students and our amazing coordinator, Elliot Fuchs. Thank you to the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Taubus. Thank you to our head of school, Rabbi Joshua Kahn, and the administration for ensuring that we have names and numbers at MTA for the 14th year. After viewing the film, you've seen the hard work of our devoted students and our filmmaker, Michael Pirro, who instructed the students, filmed them, and made this very powerful film, The Movie in the Making. Through this film, the students will continue the pledge made at the first World Gathering of Holocaust survivors. Quote, "We pledge to remember. We shall fight anti-Semitism and all forms of racial hatred by our dedication to freedom throughout the world." In conclusion, I would like to read from an email that I received from Chaim Weiser, one of our MTA survivors, who, by the way, tonight, 76 years ago, entered into Auschwitz. Quote, "I am forever grateful for being chosen alongside such distinguished interviewees. Not a day goes by that I don't cherish this wonderful experience. I cannot imagine a more urgent undertaking that will perpetuate to the world the memory of the great tragedy that befell the Jewish people." Chaim, who I think is also watching this together with his daughter, I want to pledge from our students that you and all of our survivors this year who were interviewed will continue telling your stories, and they will be the witnesses to the witnesses.
Thank you, Tova. We're now going to have the opportunity to hear the students themselves reflect on their experience from this past year. For our first student, we're going to start with DJ Wartelsky, who had the opportunity to interview his great-great-aunt, Mrs. Mildred Muncie Seidenfeld. DJ.
Thank you very much. I also want to open by thanking the administration, Rabbi Kahn, Rabbi Schenker, Rabbi Taubus, and I also want to thank Mrs. Rosenberg. Thank you very much for all of the effort that you put into this program. And I would also like to thank Mr. Fuchs for all of the effort that he put into this program as well, coordinating everything behind the scenes. Every night, I have a chavrusa who's a few years older than me, who participated in Names Not Numbers a few years ago. And when I told him I was participating, he told me how important he thought the program was. And he expressed to me that the program was really life-changing, that what he, when he interviewed his survivor, and he took the trip to Poland, which, unfortunately we cannot take this year, but he remarked how, the experience stuck with him, even years later, when he's learning with me. And, that really stuck with me. I think it's true, that, this experience of, I think that, having interviewed someone that I know, someone that is a family member, I think it was a very special opportunity. Someone who was the sister of my namesake, who really knew my namesake, really knew the family history and the story. And I think that's going to stick with me. I think what's very important is, I think it's very important to, the movie itself, to perpetuate the legacy of the survivors that were interviewed, not just the people not just the person that I interviewed, but all of the interviewees, to perpetuate their stories and their legacy, to show that, behind the 6 million and behind, all of the atrocities that were committed. There were humans. It was human life. That we can't think of 6 million as a statistic. We need to think about 6 million as being 6 million Jews. It could have been our brothers and sisters. We never know. And I think that's what I'm gonna end up taking away from this.
Thank you, DJ. We're now going to have the opportunity to hear from Noam Abrams, who interviewed his grandfather, Mr. Oscar Moll.
I'd again like to thank everyone who set up the program and helped run it and made it possible. My grandfather was only 3 years old when World War II began in 1938. After escaping Germany, he spent several years in Poland and Siberia with his mother and father. Life in Siberia was difficult. People were hungry, people were sick, people died. There was no way to enjoy life. But my grandfather and his parents both survived. They made it through the war. When the war ended, they were placed in a DP camp preparing to go to America. A new life was in reach. But right before they were ready to leave, my grandfather's mother underwent surgery, which resulted in her death at the age of 37. When my grandfather arrived in New York City, he didn't know anything about Judaism, but his father put him in yeshiva. Yeshiva Tova in Brooklyn took in many refugees without asking for tuition. As a 12-year-old, he had to start with the Aleph Beis. He applied himself, and after a short time, he was able to learn Chumash and Gemara with his schoolmates. His time at Torah made an impression on him, and he remains grateful to them till this day. My grandfather's story taught me the value of perseverance. His father worked hard to keep the family safe during the war, and then they both had to start over again and again in a new country, missing his mother and his father missing a wife. They had to start over from scratch. And I think what I'll really take away from this is the perseverance that people need to have in bad situations.
Thank you, Noam. Next up, we have Aaron Borgen, who interviewed Mrs. Estia Barron-Friedman.
Okay, so thank you to everyone. Thank you to Mrs. Rosenberg, Mr. Fuchs, of course, Mike, the cameraman. Thank you so much for preparing everything for, especially at such a difficult time when we're not going to be in person, having an experience that we're all together. It's much more difficult to have over the phone and on Zoom. So thank you very much. Also to Rabbi Taubis, Rabbi Kahn, Dr. Taylor, and of course, Mr. Kaplan, who came to give us a lecture about preparing for interviews and stuff. So of course, none of this could have happened without the survivors. So the biggest thank you really goes to the survivors. Rebbetzin Chaya Small, Mr. Oscar Moll, Mrs. Monsi Seidenfeld, Mr. Rene Slakin, Mr. Gaston Silvera, and of course, the survivor that I had the opportunity to interview, Ms. Estia Friedman. And the biggest thank you comes because even though I'm sure it's very difficult for all of you guys to bring back these memories, we thank you so much for bringing them back. So I was asked to speak about my views, how my views and my perspective have changed since the interview, hearing Mrs. Friedman's very inspirational story. So one thing that I really took out of this was that you can't take anything for granted. Life for at least Miss Estia Friedman was that she had a very nice life. She was living very well before the war, but all of a sudden everything changed up and things went bad pretty quick. And a lot of people in her family didn't survive. So one thing we really have to take into account is appreciation. And especially a time like now, we can, even though of course it's not going to compare to the atrocities of the Holocaust, it can put it a little more into perspective. We don't have schools. It's hard for schools to happen. Programs are closing. A lot of stuff is shutting down, but that's really how one thing that can put it into perspective for us, because we're living great lives compared to what happened in the Holocaust. So a little thing that can put it into perspective is nowadays. with this whole situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Next, we have Yoni Ambinder, who interviewed Rebbetzin Chaya Small.
I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Unfortunately, we can't meet in person, but at least we have Zoom. I want to thank Rav Elliot Fuchs, Mrs. Tova Rosenberg, Rav Kahn, Rav Talbis, Mike, Jonah, everyone for making this possible. It was delightful working with all of you. I especially want to thank Rebbetzin Chaya Small for coming in all the way from Chicago, because without her, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you. I just want her to know that all of her words won't just be cherished by all of us who did the project, but by everyone who watches the video. So thank you. Just looking back when I was told to do this assignment and speak for everyone, I just looked back and I remembered when Rebbetzin Chaya Small walked through those doors at MTA. Me, myself, and my peers all saw the same thing. She was the kind of person who just, when you spoke to her, you kind of smiled. It was, I can't really explain it, but she just shed positive light wherever she goes. But it was at that moment when I realized one thing. I had finally met a Holocaust survivor. When I was younger, I was always told about stories of people who survived the Holocaust, people who didn't. It was a big thing, a part of my childhood. And at this moment, it really hit me, and it was a surreal moment that I'll always remember for the rest of my life. A big message that we could take out from this is that, I'll tell you, Rebbetzin Chaya Small, throughout the entire, throughout all the circumstances, the difficult challenges which she faced, she always, after every single story which she told us, she always ended off with, but you have to have a positive, you have to face it with a positive light. And that's just such a good thing, such a good message that we need in these days, not just in these days, but as humans, we deal with so many challenges. And the way to deal with them, as I learned from Rebbetzin Chaya Small, which we should all infuse into our lives, is that you have to have a positive light, have bitachon and emunah, and hopefully everything will work out. So that's the message that I get from the Rebbetzin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yoni. Next up, we've got Itamar Basalal. Itamar interviewed Mr. Gaston Silvera.
I'd like to thank the administration, Silver Fish, and Elliot Fuchs for helping run the program, and to the survivors for sharing their story. I interviewed Gaston Silvera. When I heard he's from Tunis, it made a connection, because you never hear the stories from Tunisia, like from the survivors from North Africa, and made a connection to Sephardi, and then I'm also Edu Mizrahi, so I can hear in the story. I was asked to answer the question, what was inspirational to me, and I found, and this is my answer, what I found inspirational was each time when Gaston and his family were trying to get away from the Nazis and going from city to city, there's always a person or a family to help him. One of the stories that was very impactful is when his family had to pay off one of the Muslims, he wanted money. So the father went to the rabbi, and the rabbi gave him the money to help him. We see that even during these hard times during the Holocaust, there are people that helped, and these helped out these people, even though they have no shaykhus and the rabbi that helped them, it's inspirational, and they do chesed during these hard times during the Holocaust.
Thank you, Itamar. The last representative from the students will be Yehoshua Pariser. Shua interviewed Mr. Ney Slotkin.
We're living in a time where we do not know what's going to happen day by day, let alone minute by minute. It's very important that we have something called emunah, faith and belief. When my survivor, Renee Slotkin, started talking about his numbers on his arm, he spoke about how from his view, the numbers added up to 26, but from someone else's view, the numbers added up to 23. So if you take 23, he said it represents that even though I'm in a dark place and and I don't know what's happening, I should not be afraid because Hashem's with me. Rabbi Talbis said in the Emunah session this year that Avram did not ask below 10 by the story of Sodom, why not save 9 people, 1 person? It was because there are some questions that cannot be answered. The reason why when he said he has the number 26, he said it reminded him of Yud Kei Vav Kei. I had the zechus of calling him Erev Yom HaShoah and asking him what is one message he would tell the guys from our yeshiva on Yom HaShoah. And he said that 26 refers to the Shem Hashem, that reminds people of Rachmim and mercy. That everything that Hashem does is because He loves us. When I was in 8th grade, I also did names, not numbers, and my Rabbi Chetavsky shared a story about a chassid from Majit who was on a train on the way to Auschwitz, and he was composing a song, a very famous tune to the words Ani Mamin. And he said that whoever gets these notes to the Majitzer Rebbe will get half of my Olam Haba. The 2 people jumped off of the train. 1 person survived, got the notes to Harav Ben Zion Shinker, who was a famous composer in America. And Rav Ben Zion Shinker read the notes, composed it, made an arrangement, sang it to the Majitzer Rebbe. And the Majitzer Rebbe said that this will be the song of Mashiach. That even though we're living in dark times right now, we have to know 3 things: that Hashem is always there for us. He's doing everything because He loves us, and we have to just keep on going and keep our head up.
Thank you, Shua. As everyone can see, just from these few moments, this past year and this experience has been incredibly impactful on our students. This has just been a small sample size of what our students have been experiencing and the thoughts that they've been able to internalize, the lessons that they've learned. Their perseverance, their emunah, their love for others. These are just some of the messages that they were able to learn from their survivors. To close off the evening, we're going to ask Rabbi Taubes to speak, the Rosh Yeshiva of MTA. Rabbi Taubes has been involved in the program since the beginning, and a couple of times over the course of the year, he spoke to us about emunah and how to interact with our emunah in light of the Shoah, in light of the Holocaust. These sessions that Rabbi Taubes led were both for the students and for myself very powerful. These sessions allowed us to internalize some of what happened and contextualize it and understand that how to make that part of our lives. So I'd like to ask Rabbi Taubes to say a few words.
Thank you very much. I echo the words. I assume I can be heard okay. I'd like to echo the words of thanks, first and foremost, to the survivors who are here watching and listening this evening, and those who are not able to do so, perhaps hopefully will have the opportunity to see the movie as it's being aired now this evening and beyond. And I thank them for coming to our yeshiva and for giving of their time and sharing their personal, very personal, highly personal stories with our Talmidim. I hope you survivors can see the impact that your story and your sharing with our Talmidim has had on them. Tonight you got just a small sample, just one representative, I guess, from each group, but really it impacted everybody, and it's such an important thing, and we're terribly grateful for your efforts and the giving of your time. And I know it's not always easy to come out and schlep down to Washington Heights and so on, but we're very, very grateful that you did it. Of course, our thanks to our head of school, Rabbi Kahn, for supporting the program, to Elliot for the first year, did a great job, under actually very difficult circumstances which we certainly didn't anticipate at the beginning of the year, but to coordinate everything and so on. And of course, to Mrs. Rosenberg, who created this program, which is a nationwide program. It's more than nationwide because they do it in Eretz Yisrael also, and perhaps expanding out to other places, we'll see. But really, it's touched the lives of so many young adults and older adults too. It's really something wonderful. And, I've considered myself very fortunate to have gotten involved, not from the beginning, Elliot, not quite from the beginning, but for a while. And I'm very happy to be part of it. I just want to share one parting thought that I think, summarizes what names not numbers is all about. last week in the Kriyas HaTorah, we learned Parshas Bamidbar. Most of us were not able to hear the Kriyas HaTorah in Shul just yet, but the Parshas of Shavuot is Parshas Bamidbar, which begins the book that we call Numbers in the language of Chazal, Chumash HaPekudim. And our practice is actually to always read that Sedra on the Shabbos immediately prior to Shavuos. Shavuos, of course, is this Friday, so we learn Parshas Bamidbar prior to Shavuos. Now, the truth is, that's a little bit of an accident in the sense that the Gemara tells us in the end of Megillah that it's proper to read Parshas Bechukosai 2 weeks ago on the Shabbos before Shavuos. Parshas Bechukosai contains what we call the Tochacha, the long list of terrible punishments that unfortunately will be visited upon the Jewish people should we fail to observe the mitzvahs and so on. That's a terrible list of horrible things. We call it the Tochacha. That's supposed to be read on the Shabbos before Shavuos. It's not our practice. Our practice is to read that the Shabbos before Shavuos. There was 2 Shabbos before Shavuos, as we did this year. And we always read Parshas Bamidbar, and the Balei Tosfos explains that this sort of is to make a little bit of a buffer. We don't want to go right from such a horrible Tochacha, list of punishments, right into the wonderful holiday of Kabbalas HaTorah, of Matan Torah, of Shavuos, and so we create a buffer, and that buffer happens to be Parshas Bamidbar. However, there's no such thing really as accidents. And I think a very important part of Kabbalas HaTorah is that which might be a little bit of an auxiliary lesson from Parshas Bamidbar. If you look carefully at the words in Parshas Bamidbar, the Torah tells us directly that they're supposed to count the Jewish people, but it keeps saying b'mispar shemos, b'mispar shemos, names, not numbers. It's exactly what the Torah is saying in the Sedra we just read a few days ago. It's names, not numbers. The Jewish people had to be counted. There was a way that the census was done, and the details are not important for right now. But again, the idea that Chazal stressed, the Ramban stresses this point, and others make note of it as well, that every Jew presented himself in front of Moshe Rabbeinu himself and identified who he was. Because for us, a human being, a Jew, is not just another number. And even when you have to take a census, and that's what this parsha was about, it was about a census of the Jewish people. Even when you have to take a census and we're interested in getting a total tally, and the Torah describes exactly how many people belong to each Shevet and what the total number of Jews in Bnei Yisrael were between the age of 20 and 60, and eligible to serve in the army and so on. Even though the goal was to get the total number, but you don't count Jews by identifying a person simply as a number. When the Nazis, unfortunately, in many places, put numbers on the arms of people that some of you saw, and they identified people by branding them, one of their goals was to tell each person that you're nothing more than another number. We brand cows. We brand animals. The Nazis, Yamach Shemam, branded people. And that was part of the psychological warfare, to break down the person's sense of self. You're nothing more than another number on a list. But that's not our approach. Our approach at every Jew is mispar shemos. We're a name, not a number. And a person is a human being. And a person has a story to tell. And a person has a life. And a person has loved ones. And a person that people care about him and about whom he or she cares. You see, that's really the genius and the greatness of this program. We interview people who are names and not numbers. And as I said before, that's exactly what the Torah specified in last week's Sedra. And it seems to me that that's no accident that Sedra is read the Shabbos immediately prior to Shavuos. Because when we received the Torah at Har Sinai, the Torah was given to people. The Torah was given to each and every Jew. And we say in the davening 3 times a day at the end of the Shemona Esrei, V'sein chalkeinu b'sorasecha. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give us each our own chelik in Torah. What that means is that I have a chelik in Torah that maybe you don't have. And it doesn't matter the person's level of knowledge or ability or age or experience. Everybody, every Jew has a chelik in Torah. And every Jew has a unique chelik in Torah. And it's our job to discover our unique chelik in Torah. Every person can come up with an insight, with something to discuss, a point to ponder, a question to ask, if we put our minds to it. That's what Kabbalas HaTorah is all about. an individual. Yes, we operate as a nation, ki ish echad b'lev echad. However, each one of us counts as an individual because the Torah was given to each and every one of us. It's interesting. We have to recognize when it comes to Matan Torah that we receive the Torah not only as a nation, but as individuals. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that if somebody asks a shaila, somebody asks a question of someone who's more knowledgeable, and the other person doesn't answer, not because he's not busy or he's too busy or he's occupied, somebody else has time to answer, just doesn't feel like answering. That person, the Gemara implies, is a thief because he's taking away somebody's chelik in Torah. The other person who's asking the question has a right to Torah as well, and you have no right to keep it to yourself. And that's the idea of names, not numbers. We're all names, we're all people. So it's our hope, and we see that it, Baruch Hashem, happened, that our Talmidim understood in interviewing the beloved survivors that are here. All of us saw in these interviews, and again, I had the opportunity over the years, to sit in on quite a number of interviews. Most meaningful, I guess, to me, my own father, Alav Shalom, was interviewed by Names Not Numbers a few years back in MTA. We got to hear his story. We got to hear this one's story and that one's story. And it's so personalized. It so makes it come alive and recognize that these are people who had dreams that were dashed, who had lives that were shattered, but Baruch Hashem, who survived, who tell the tale, and who inspire all of us. And so, as we conclude this evening and this unusual Names Not Numbered dinner, I guess it's bring your own dinner, but as we conclude this program, I think it's important for us to reflect on all of us, on what we got, and we saw what the students got this evening, and always remember that when we appear before the Moshe Rabbeinos and before our leaders and so on, and indeed before Kadosh Baruch Hu, it's b'mispar shemos. I have a name, I'm a person, and I count for something. And I hope that all of our students will never forget this particular lesson and will always use this as an opportunity to respect others, to treat others, not only survivors, but other people in general, with the respect that every person is due, because every person, as Chazal say, is an olam mali, is a whole world. We got that lesson. If we did, we indeed have gotten a lot out of this program. And I know that we did. Yasher koach again to all of you who participated, and to all of you who coordinated, to all of the survivors, what I think was another wonderful, wonderful Names Not Numbers year. Thank you very much. And I wish everybody a good Yantif as we approach Shavuos.
Thank you, Rabbi Taubes. I'd like to again thank everyone, the administration, Tova, Michael, and most importantly, our students, our survivors, and the survivors' families who helped with so much of the coordination. For those who have asked, the film will be available past tonight. We're going to keep it up on the YouTube link for about another week, perhaps a little bit more. And there will be a link sent out to the recording of this conversation. So both of those links will be available, and please feel free to share them with friends and family. We would like everyone to appreciate this evening and this film as much as we did. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Yasher koach, beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yasher koach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasher koach.
Night, Tante Muncie.
Kol tov, thank you. Kol tov.
Good night from both of us. And thank you.
And Cousin Layu, sorry.